everyone, Lucamus Prime here. So it is time for the next episode of my series, Old is Better Than New. And in today's video, I'm going to come this time another example of a television series where I personally think that old is better than new. Definitely for me a big, strong example of this opinion, really. And this is also a special occasion for me because this is actually the very first TV show I ever saw in my life. And this is also as well, pretty much the first ever, popular franchise I ever saw in my life too. Yes, even before things like Star Wars and DC and Marvel, this is my first ever one, really. And this is a franchise involving who is probably the world's most famous steam engine. And if you guys have seen this show, you'll probably know who I'm talking about most definitely because this character is a worldwide icon and created, of course, by the legendary member of the clergy, the Reverend Wilbur Awdry, may he rest in peace. And this series, what I personally think Old is Better Than New, is none other than Thomas the Tank Engine, or Thomas and Friends, if you want to call it. So, now, you guys probably going to ask me, what does Thomas and Friends mean to me? So, when I was really, really young, I think probably about maybe 2 or 3 years old, I, of course, started watching Thomas and Friends as my first ever TV show I ever saw in my life. And in the UK, of course, they aired the first 2 series on television on repeat because they aired in the 80s. I was, of course, born in 1999. So I definitely really loved the first 2 seasons of it, narrated by Ringo Starr. And I definitely had a lot of fun watching those when I was a little kid. Then, of course, from the series 3 onward, they began to get narrated by my favourite author of the series, of course, which is Michael Angelis, may he rest in peace. And I will say that out of all the narrators I've grown up with over the years, Michael Angelis, to me, is the greatest Thomas narrator of all time. And of course, he's actually as well the longest-serving narrator overall, really, too. And I can definitely see why he's always been brought back to narrate it, because I personally think his voice is just so great to listen to. And I must also give him lots of praise for bringing every character to life with his voice, because not only, of course, did he tell the stories, him and Ringo Starr, they both also as well play the characters with all different kinds of personalities. I think that they both did a really amazing job doing that. And Michael Angelis, for me, is my personal favourite narrator. And if you guys are also going to ask him what my favourite series is, it is most definitely Series 5. It always will be, because that's the series I grew up when I was a kid, and it's just where I think the show is at its best, in my opinion. Although I'll probably argue that the classic series was on the shows in its prime, really. And then, of course, in 2000, we did also get Thomas and the Magic Railroad. Now, what I will say is, when I was a little kid and I saw that film, I used to love it, but unfortunately, as I've got older and older over the years, and especially, of course, nowadays, that's an example of a film where my opinion has aged horribly. Because nowadays, I personally hate that movie. I think it's terrible in my opinion. But I would, however, gladly watch back over what we're getting today when it comes to Thomas, though. Because at least that movie did have the model engines, and not, of course, what we're getting nowadays, at least. So at least the characters had some resemblance to their TV show counterparts, at least. Then, of course, Series 6 and 7 aired, and I thought they were once again really good. I preferred 7 over 6, in my opinion, though. 6 I thought was just okay, really, but I think 7 was, in my opinion, better. Although I will say that 7 was in my opinion, quite lazy, because that, of course, is the series which used the most archive footage in the whole series, actually, including, of course, what we're getting today when it comes to Thomas. Yeah, this was the series which had the most archive footage. Then, of course, with Series 8 onward, the show then got a revamp with improved models as well, and a different soundtrack as well, but Michael Angelis remained on as narrator. And I thought Series 8 to 11 were once again good, in my opinion, too. I will say that. Although some episodes I wasn't a fan of, but the whole series as a whole, I still enjoyed watching when I was a little kid. Then, from the Series 12 onward, something happened to the series after, of course, the release of the film Thomas and the Great Discovery. Well, if we're talking about the American audience, because they, of course, got the Great Discovery first before Series 12. In the UK, for me, the film came out after Series 12. But when it comes to Series 12, though, they did introduce something very questionable, in my opinion, of course, which was CGI. Because they began to show, CGI for a character with a mouse moving with a narrator's voice. And also the people of Sodor were also CGI and not model people as well, for some reason. So, I personally thought that was a questionable thing to do, really, how they merged models with CGI. But I still enjoyed Series 12 for what it was worth, because at least it still had the model engines, thankfully, at least. But I think the introduction CGI was very questionable. And that being said, though, Series 12 was actually the only series to actually use this feature. Because, unfortunately, from the movie called Hero of the Rails onward, the show then was entirely CGI. And I personally was not a fan of that change because I don't know what it is, but the show just felt so different in my opinion. And I say different in not a good way because I was so used to the model railway being used, and I just didn't really like the direction they took with making it entirely CGI for some reason. And it just didn't really feel realistic anymore, in my opinion, either, because I think by using a model railway, the trains, in my opinion, look so real, in my opinion, and the models just so realistic. Apart from the people, of course, because you could tell they weren't real people, of course, in the classic series, but it just felt so natural, in my opinion, with a classic series. And there's also something else I also was not a fan of with, of course, the series onward, and this also applies to Magic Railroad. I was personally not a fan of how all the engines had different voice actors and not just one being the narrator. Because that, in my opinion, just goes against what made the classic series so memorable, in my opinion, how the narrator was so talented at playing every character, at least for UK dub. That's what I grew up with. I can't really comment much on the American dub because I've not seen much of the American dub. I've only seen bits of it. It's good though still, but personally I prefer Michael Angelis, to be honest. But if you guys ask me my favourite American narrators of a series, I'm going to go with George Carlin, may he rest in peace. I think he did a great job narrating Series 3 and 4, and then he redubbed 1 and 2. Yeah, rest in peace to George, he's a legend. And when it comes to a CGI series, I was personally not a fan of the voice cast, to be honest. And this also applies as well to Magic Railroad for the most part when it comes to a voice cast. Because my favourite part of that film was Diesel 10. But I was not a fan of the voice cast in this series because the voices I heard, they weren't how I'd imagine the characters to sound, and that just went downhill in my opinion. And I feel many of the characters went unlikable, especially, unfortunately, Thomas, which really breaks my heart because how much I love Thomas as a character. Like, why is it in the classic series, he's more likable than what we're getting today for Thomas? Like, what's going on? And you guys might also be asking me, did I stop watching the series? Well, yes, I did. Because even though I did not like the direction we went in making the whole thing CGI, I still watched it because Michael Angelis kept narrating it. So despite there being a voice cast, he still narrated the series, so I listened to his voice still, and it was great to listen to. He still got it, despite not voicing the characters anymore. But unfortunately for me, he left the series for UK dubs after the release of a film called The Blue Mountain Mystery, which brought up the Little Engines. So that was unfortunately the last thing he did for Thomas when it comes to release the order, because despite that special being made before Series 16, they released it after it for some reason for the UK. So I don't understand why they did that. So after, of course, Series 16 and Blue Mountain Mystery, Michael Angelis left, and when Series 17 came out in the UK, I noticed that they'd recast the narrator with Mark Morahan. And because they changed the narrator, I was done. I couldn't watch show anymore, really. So as far as I'm concerned, the show that I used to love was pretty much just not what it used to be. Mainly because my favourite narrator was gone, so I just gave up on the series at that point. But then again, unfortunately, that wasn't the end of the worst things to come. Because after we got several seasons of a CGI show, it of course then ended in 2021. So that was the end of the Thomas and Friends run. Because then, the series got rebooted, and that, for me, was one of the absolute worst decisions a TV show has ever done when it comes to Thomas. Because they went from a 3D CGI series to a 2D series. And that, in my opinion, was a massive mistake. Now, I have not seen this new series called Thomas and Friends All Engines Go, and I also, frankly, don't want to, because I've seen pictures of it on social media and also, as well, clips on YouTube, and I must say that, in my opinion, this show has been ruined so much by that. Like, I can't believe it's such a great show. One I got when I was a little kid, and they've just ruined it, in my opinion. Like, I think it's pretty much true to say this franchise, as Thomas will put it, is cinders and ashes. Like, one thing I think is so dumb is, I really hate as well one thing with voices. I mean, if you guys thought the voices in the CGI series, when we did it fully CGI, were bad, wait to hear the voices in this new series, because in my opinion, they're much more worse and much more insufferable to listen to. Like, I just can't stand them. Like, I can't believe we went from such an amazing series with model engines to this. Like, what happened? And I've also heard from one of my best friends, Ozzy, but they've also ruined many of the characters too. For example, Diesel, for some reason, is now friends with Thomas. But, like, come on. He's supposed to be Thomas's rival, not a friend. Oh, my goodness. Like, how could you do that to Diesel? So, yeah, I personally feel that the show has been ruined so much by this new series. Then again, but I think the show is going downhill anyway due to, of course, the CGI coming along, really. That's what I'll say, really. So I feel as though the show is at its best when it was a model series, not as a CGI series. That, in my opinion, was when it was at its best. So I personally feel that the show has gone downhill, and especially today, it's gone downhill. So I have zero plans to watch this new 2D series. Absolutely not, because I think they've ruined the show that I grew up when I was a little kid. And I'm not going to waste a single second of my time on it. Absolutely not. Because this show, as far as I'm concerned, is dead. And there's no chance of me ever going to watch any more of it. I'll stick to a classic series, which I loved when I was a kid. From Series 1 to Series 11. Maybe Series 12, because it still has model engines. But I still didn't like how it had CGI in it. But I'll stick to the first 11 series. But mainly as well from Series 1 to 7, because that was a classic series. That, in my opinion, was on the show at its prime, in my opinion. And I'll also keep reading the Railway series by Reverend Wilbur Awdry as well, because that of course, was books that started off this franchise, because of course, he wrote those books for his son who was ill, which was definitely, in my opinion, a very nice thing to do. And the books are absolutely wonderful. I can't recommend those books enough if you guys have not read them. They're great books to read. I'll stick to the books and to the first 7 series, and also as well from Series 8 to 11 when it comes to the revamped model series as well. So, long story short, guys, this was me covering why, in my opinion, Thomas the Tank Engine is a massive example in TV show territory of a franchise where, for me, old is better than new. So, you know the drill, guys. Be sure to give this video a like. Also, be sure to let me know in the comments what you guys think of Thomas the Tank Engine. Do you think old is better than new for that franchise? Let me know in the comments below. Also, be sure to join Team Prime by pressing subscribe and comment in the future. And I'll see you all later.